back to
when it comes to the regulatory capture, I think that even President Trump would admit at this point that he would have to do a much better job in his second term with regard to staffing.
But why do you give him a second term if he's messed it up so badly the first time? He said he was going to do that the first time. If I had been president, I would have done it. He was able, and even when he knew what was wrong, he said, well, I'll never lock down this country. But he got rolled by his bureaucrats.
I mean, I think that a lot of people who support President Trump, myself included, will believe that he got rolled by his own state.
Yeah,
and that's why 2020 was a disaster.
We need somebody in there who will not get rolled by their bureaucrats.
RFK Jr. is a Democrat plant, a radical left liberal who's been put in place in order to help crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States, get reelected. A lot of people think that Jr. is a conservative. He's not. He's more liberal than anybody running on the Democrat side. A vote for Jr. would essentially be a wasted protest vote that could swing either way, but would only swing against the Democrats if Republicans knew the true story about him. Jr. is totally anti-gun, an extreme environmentalist who makes the Green New scammers look very conservative by comparison. A big-time taxer, he wants to tax you. An open border advocate. He wants those borders to be wide open for more people to come in from prisons and mental institutions. And he's anti-military and he's anti-vet. He's an extreme liberal. He's radical left, and radicalized also are his family. They'll never allow him to be a Republican. They've said that we will not let him be a Republican. And his chief funder is the VP candidate that nobody ever heard of, except her ex-husband, who's been stripped of a big chunk of his cash. And he knows exactly what she's all about. She's even more liberal than RFK Jr. She puts herself down as a businesswoman or maybe a doctor, and actually she probably is, because she did a hell of a big number on the husband. That's her business. I guess you could say that she's right, however, because what she's done is given a lot of money to the Democrat causes and the ultra-liberal causes. She's going to be a big hindrance, because when people saw that she was selected, they realized that Junior was indeed a radical left. She's more liberal than Junior by far, not a serious person, and only a pot of cash to help her get her no-chance candidate on the ballot is what got her there in the first place. I lived with RFK Jr. in New York and watched him convince Governor Cuomo to make environmental moves that were outright nasty and really bad for the state. We have the highest energy costs anywhere in the country, and that's because of RFK Jr. He was a disaster. Upstate New York was not allowed to drill or frack, as Ohio, Pennsylvania, and others ripped off New York energy. Because of this, prices have skyrocketed all over that part of the country, and frankly, it's affected New England, it's affected everybody. But all of this was the policy of RFK Jr. He doesn't want any drilling whatsoever. He doesn't want anything. He wants everything to come to a halt, and you'd find that out. But the fact is, he is a radical left person. So Republicans, get it out of your mind that you're going to vote for this guy because he's conservative. He's not. And by the way, he said the other night that vaccines are fine. He said it on a show, a television show, that vaccines are fine. He's all for them. And that's what he said. And for those of you that want to vote because you think he's an anti-vaxxer, he's not really an anti-vaxxer. That's only his political moment. He said it the other night. He's okay with the vaccine. Their energy costs are the highest in the United States, in New York State and New England, because of this guy, with the exception of California and Gavin Newsom, who's the worst governor in the state's history and one of the worst governors in the history of our country. I'd even take Biden over Junior, because our country would last about a year or two longer than it would with Junior. It would collapse almost immediately, and his family, a radical left, a crazy left, a bunch of lunatics, would take over, and our country will die very quickly. So RFK's views on vaccines are fake, as is everything else about his candidacy. He is not a Republican, so don't think you're going to vote for him and feel good. He's a radical left Democrat. Let the Democrats have RFK Jr. They deserve him.
You're calling for a debate with President Trump. You have an open letter to him. I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, we're both, Eric, thanks for having me, first of all. We're both speaking at the Libertarian Convention in Washington, D.C. on May 24th and 25th. I've invited President Trump to debate. He's repeatedly said that he is willing to debate anytime, any place. He said that he specifically would debate me as long as my poll numbers are up. My numbers now in the latest Quinnipiac poll and CNN poll exceed the 15% threshold. We also have just done the biggest poll of the campaign. Typical polls, Eric, are around 22,000 people, 1,200 to 2,000 people. Our poll was 26,000 people. It costs almost $200,000. The value of this poll, other people would charge $500,000 for it. It is so large that it has virtually a zero margin of error. And that poll shows, we did head-to-head races, and that poll shows that in a head-to-head race, I beat President Trump narrowly, and that I beat President Biden in a landslide. That the poll also shows that whether I'm in the race or I'm out of the race, President Biden cannot win the race. And in fact, President Trump wins 2 extra states if Maryland or Virginia and Maine, if I drop out of the race. But the poll shows me that the first time in history in head-to-head races, a third-party candidate beating the candidates of both political parties. And that's unprecedented.
Here you are, and you put this open letter out. Have you heard back from the Trump campaign?
We have not heard from him yet, but we hope to hear from him, and I hope to see him at the Libertarian Convention. The other news that we have is we got on the ballot in the state of Delaware. So we now have sufficient signatures for 11 states. We're getting 2 or 3 states a week, and we'll continue doing that until we have all 50. We will be on all 50 by July. And something that, again, has never been done with this many, a million signatures. We're going to get almost 2 million. We're going to get about double what we need to give us a big cushion, because the DNC and the RNC are both trying to throw us off the ballot because they don't want to have this contest. And then, the last piece of news is that we put out 2 days ago, we put the Super PAC, the Kennedy, the American Values Super PAC, put out a 30-minute video called Who is Bobby Kennedy? It's narrated by Woody Harrelson. It's a very, very powerful video, and it already has 100 million views. Both Facebook and Instagram have been actively censoring the video. They've been removing it from people's platforms, and now they continue. Now we've called their attention and threatened litigation. They've allowed people to actually post it, but they are shadow banning it and slow walking it. So we're looking at our litigation options right now, but over 100 million people have now seen that video.
So I want to get to that in a second. It's a great video, by the way. I've watched it in full. Back to the debate, and we'll get the other. You sure you want to debate Donald Trump? I mean, there are stages littered with political careers everywhere in the aftermath of people wanting to debate Donald Trump. The guy's a master debater without a question. You up for that? You ready for that?
I am, and I agree with you. I think President Trump is arguably, well, he's certainly the best debater in modern political history. I would say since my uncle. My uncle was also a very good debater, and who knows, what would have happened if my uncle had come across Donald Trump. I can't imagine it, but you could argue that he's the best debater since the Lincoln-Douglas debate. He's gone through, as you know, in 2016, he went through 16 opponents and, left them all in mayhem.
Here's a strategic question for you. So let's say, small circle, President Trump is sitting there saying, eventually we're going to have to go through RFK. And we have to figure that out because it's going to be challenging. The last RFK was an RP, right? And you know who RP was? Yeah. Ross Perot, right? And he had 19.5%, 21%, whatever the number was. And in George Bush Sr.'s documentary that was done, it's a great documentary, you got to watch it. The last 2 minutes of the documentary, the guy interviewing him asks a question about Ross Perot. It's the only thing he didn't want to answer. He got upset and walked away. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I
Highly
haven't.
recommend you watch it.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a very good documentary for you to watch to see exactly what happened with him, because I think that time's going to come as well. Let's say if you are chosen as a VP or whatever the role may be, let's say you are the VP. Do you think you could help, since you and RFK have a relationship together, to have RFK potentially, not necessarily, the better word would be to team up, because a lot of the values on what he likes, the left cannot stand him. Even the other day, a story came out, I think last week, talking about the Kennedy family. It's all behind Biden, kind of trying to undermine him. The fact that if your own family cannot support you, why would you support an RFK? They're dividing one of the most powerful Democratic last names, possibly the most powerful Democratic last name we've had the last 80 years, right? 100 years that with Joseph and what he did. What role would you play if you were on the inside to be able to communicate with RFK?
You know, I think that as this election season moves on, and you know, I'm not going to violate any privacy of the conversations that RFK and I have already had about what's going on in the country and how we share many of the same concerns about the direction our country is headed in. If it gets to that point where it appears that RFK's candidacy would help return Joe Biden to the White House, my hope would be that he would recognize that and shift course to make sure that that doesn't happen.
And you think you have enough of a relationship or influence for him to consider that?
We are good friends, but as you know, he is his own person.
Right.
So just like every one of us, you know, I have made a choice in my heart about what is at stake in this election. And as you'll see in the book, For Love of Country, this is what's motivating me. I'm going to be on the road for the rest of the year until the election is done. I'm not getting back to, I was home a few weeks ago and my mom asked when I was coming back. And I said, not until November 6th, because if I can have any impact and influence in sounding the alarm bells to those undecideds, to those disenfranchised Democrats, to those independents who may feel in their heart that things aren't right, but don't have, you know, the intellectual ammunition or the facts or the resources or those shared experiences to help make that decision for them. I'm going to put everything that I have into this election, because our country is at stake, and I hope and encourage everyone everywhere to do the same.
So, Rob, can you do me a favor and pull up the VP? Because I know it's a tough question for me to ask, and it's unfair for you to answer it because there's conversations that's been had privately, and you don't want to compromise that because later on it's going to come back, so I respect that.
I just respect relationships
totally get it.
and friendships.
I value that. For everyone out there that's watching, Tulsi is officially on Minect. Rob, if you can show her Minect, the first 50 people that Minect with Tulsi, we will send you a copy of the book as well, signed. We bought copies to get it out there because we are so confident in her message being out there. We feel more people need to hear from her. So the first 50 that Minect with Tulsi, ask her whatever questions you got, and those 50 names we're going to send you a copy. Just make sure you're in America. If you're anywhere else outside of America, we're not shipping to you. If you're not in America, don't do the Minect. Only in America we'll ship the copy to your first 50 states. Thank you for that.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.
You know, many of the issues on which you disagree with President Biden have a lot of crossover with President Trump, who obviously is running on the other side of the aisle. So, you know, you're in a strange position where Democrats are suggesting that you're a President Trump plant in order to take votes away from Biden. Some members of the Trump camp are claiming that you're a Biden plant in order to take away votes from President Trump. Why not support President Trump as an alternative to President Biden?
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I think that President Biden and President Trump are much more like each other than most people than Democrats or Republicans like to acknowledge. And let me say this, because that's going to be a controversial statement. I want to qualify it. I think President Trump and President Biden are very different in their temperaments, and extremely different. They're different in their professed ideologies. They're different in their personalities and their rhetoric. But the issues that they differ on are in a very, very narrow band. They're mainly culture war issues. They're abortion, it's guns, the border, woke ideology, those kind of transgender stuff. Some of them very, very important issues. The border is the only one that I would say is even vaguely existential. But the big issues that America that are existential to our country, that really threaten all of us, that are most concerned to all of us, neither of them has even taken positions on. The debt, for example, they're both equally bad on the debt. The debt is the most important issue. It's $34 trillion. The service on that debt is now larger than our defense budget, and our defense budget is larger than the next 10 defense budgets for the next 10 countries in the world all put together. So that is, and President Trump and President Biden are largely responsible individually for that debt. President Trump ran up the biggest debt in history. He put $8 trillion on that number. And that is more than all the presidents in 283 years of history before him. And President Biden put almost that much on it. So within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that is collected in taxes is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, and particularly if interest rates rise, within 10 years, 100% of every dollar collected in taxes will go to servicing the debt. So this is really an existential crisis for our country, and you don't hear President Biden or President Trump ever talk about it.
You do seem at times to be warm towards President Trump, and he is clearly warm towards you. And
I would definitely disagree with that. He just called me a radical effing liberal.
But he also said you're a common sense guy, and you guys in public have exchanged warm words. I think that's fair. And you said you're proud that he likes you.
I've said good things about President Biden, too.
And Biden's fine.
And my friend.
But here's where I'm going with the Trump thing. You endorsed his opponent in 2016, correct?
Hillary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. What since 2016, in his first term, and then him refusing to leave office peacefully, and January 6th, and everything since then has made you warmer towards him? I mean, you went from supporting Hillary Clinton against him in 2016 to now, however you want to describe it, the way you talk about him now. Can you explain that for us?
Well, I can explain to you that I'm running against him, so obviously I don't want him to be president of the United States, and I don't think he did a good job. And if you go look at my speeches, my statements, I am not mean-spirited.
Sure, okay.
I don't try to feed into the vitriol and the anger and the polarization. I try to respect people. One, because of the office they held, the presidency of the United States. I always call President Trump, President Trump. I call President Biden, President Biden. I treat them civilly, but I criticize their policies. And I think President Trump's and President Biden's administrations have been catastrophic for this country. They've run up a $34 trillion debt.
Would you say roughly equally catastrophic?
I would say they've both been catastrophic.
But similar?
In their own way.
But similar?
In their own way.
Because here's why people...
You're trying to get me to quantify it so that you can win a debating point, and I'm not going to do that.
It's not a debating point. Hold on. It's not a debating point. There's a big choice coming down, and you are now inserting yourself, as you have the legal right to do, as a candidate for office.
Exactly.
But you're someone who, again, in all fairness, was giving these speeches against Nader for this kind of thing, was supporting Clinton against Trump, saying this is the danger of Trump. And now people hear you, and this is a chance to talk about it, but people hear you as very similarly to Nader saying it's a pox on both houses. lesser of two evils, what others call false equivalency. I want to play for you some of what Donald Trump. Wait, and then I'll let you respond. But I made this. I made this for you. This is some of what Donald Trump stands for and why people hear you, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., talk about false equivalency.
This is all debating tricks. You're lighting.
There's not a trick at all.
You're lighting fires faster than I can put them out. Every single thing you say, I can answer.
It's not
Give me
okay.
a chance to
So
answer.
take a listen to this, and you'll get the floor. Look at why people say, "How can you say Biden and Trump are similarly catastrophic or both catastrophic?" "Quote unquote." Take
I
a look.
said they were both catastrophic.
Both catastrophic. "Quote
in
unquote."
different ways.
Knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. I will pay for the legal fees, I promise.
Very fine people on both sides.
These aren't people. These are animals.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country. I said I want to be a dictator for one day. It's nice to have a strong man running your country.
People are concerned not that this is Nader 2.0, but that you are using the platform and the following you have to suggest that they're both catastrophic and they're similar, and that you, they say, are ignoring not only the policy difference, but the actual possible democracy and autocratic threat of Donald Trump if he wins again. Perhaps thanks to you, your response.
Yeah, I never said that. So, like I said, I think both of them did bad things to our country. I think both of them contributed. President Trump, more than any president in history, built $8 trillion after coming in and promising the country that he was going to run the government like a business. He shut down every business, 3.3 million businesses with no due process, no just compensation. That's a violation of the Constitution. He ran up an $8 trillion debt. More money he spent than every president between George Washington and George W. Bush, 283 years. President Biden is racing to catch up with him. He's added $1 trillion in the last 100 days. We're now spending more for our national debt, our $34 trillion debt, and we are on our defense budget. Just to service that debt, within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that we collect in taxes is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100%. It's not sustainable. They're both catastrophic. Neither of them can solve that problem. Let me tell you something else they can't do. Neither of them can end the vitriol that you are trying to pump up right now. I understand.
What have I said that's vitriolic?
What
have I said that's vitriolic?
You're saying to me that I need to take a side and say one person.
No, I'm asking you about, you're running for president, it's a big job, and I'm asking you about what people say out there.
You told me I would have the floor. You told me.
Yes, I did.
After you get
but you
your
just
long,
said,
long
you
speech.
just suggested that I am perpetrating vitriol, and I asked you to substantiate that. What have I said today that is vitriolic?
Let me finish what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I said when I announced a year ago is that we are facing a time in our history, Harry, that is more, and I think you'll agree with this, you are a student of history, that is more vitriolic, more polarized, more poisonous than at any time since the American Civil War. And it's all being amplified by the social media algorithms. And it's hard to see a way out of that if somebody doesn't come along and say, I'm not going to participate in that. And even if people act crazy on both sides, I'm not going to be part of that craziness. I'm going to try to talk about the issues that people care about. In fact, the fact that 57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency in their family. That cohort, if the engine light comes on in their car, it's the apocalypse. There's more than half of our countrymen. And these two presidents have created that situation. More than 50% of the people in this country are making $5,000 less than the cost of basic human needs.
Well,
and
we're
embroiled in forever wars.
So when you
mention neither of these guys can get us out of. I think President Trump is arguably, well, he's certainly the best debater in modern political history. I would say since my uncle. My uncle was also a very good debater, and who knows, what would have happened if my uncle had come across Donald Trump. I can't imagine it, but you could argue that he's the best debater since the Lincoln-Douglas debate. He's gone through, as you know, in 2016, he went through 16 opponents and, left them all in mayhem.
There are now 2 debates between you and President Biden, but if RFK Jr. qualifies to be on that stage, will you still participate?
Well, I have no problem with him. I think he's really not doing well in the polls at all. His numbers have gone down a lot lately, but I would have no problem if he got whatever the threshold is. But he's very low, and he seems to be heading in the other direction, in the wrong direction. I would have no problem with it, though. If he qualified, I would have no problem.
You're calling for a debate with President Trump. You have an open letter to him. I'll let you explain it.
We're both speaking at the Libertarian Convention in Washington, D.C. on May 24th and 25th. I've invited President Trump to debate. He's repeatedly said that he is willing to debate anytime, any place. He said that he specifically would debate me as long as my poll numbers are up.
You sure you want to debate Donald Trump? I mean, there are stages littered with political careers everywhere in the aftermath of people wanting to debate Donald Trump. The guy's a master debater without a question. You up for that? You ready for that?
I don't underestimate President Trump, but I think I'm uniquely able to confront him on issues that nobody has confronted him on. He has now been 4 years in the presidency. And I want to talk to him about his record. I want to talk to him about why he locked down 3.3 million businesses, shifted $4 trillion in wealth from the American workers and the middle class to this new oligarchy
I would love to see
of billionaires.
that debate. Now, I would love to see this debate.